didn't know it at the time, but I was different than a lot of kids when I was younger. My favorite toy as a 3-year-old was a ball valve for plumbing. And then Legos came along for me, and I spent hours and hours playing with Legos, and they're still in my room. It's kind of silly. I'm 30 years old, and I still have these toys I made when I was 13, 12. And as a kid who was eventually going to become an engineer, looking back now, there wasn't a better tool or toy. And in that time, I had fallen in love with mountain biking. I was either going to farm or I was going to design and build farm equipment. And then fly fishing and mountain biking really started to take over my passion. So I started racing in college. We started a team, and then I started racing professionally, and I'm still racing my mountain bike professionally. It's taken me some really cool places all over the world, and you get to see what everyone's doing with mountain bikes and with bicycles. And one of the things I had seen was people taking their bikes and adapting them to railroads. It drew me right in. One of the most efficient forms of transportation is the railroad. You can move, thousands and thousands of items and pounds of whatever cargo it is or people with pretty minimal energy input. Vermont, New England in general used to be connected via railroad. These railroads went everywhere. That's how you traveled to different places. But our society today has become so dependent on having things immediately. And as that desire and that need becomes more prevalent, these railroads are slowly getting closed. And as much as that's a bummer, it does open the door for this adventure a little bit, in that we've got some places we can go explore before they get torn up and that piece of history gets lost forever. So this idea of going out and using the rails with our bikes to go access remote fishing and camping and maybe even some bike riding really appealed. And one of the things with fishing is the harder it is to access something, usually the better the fishing is, the prettier the locale. The whole purpose of doing this is to unplug, to get out and experience nature firsthand, not through a screen, not through somebody else's account, but to do this on a bike without a motor, under our own power, and to live and experience nature firsthand. So in designing this, we took some inspiration from some of the designs that were available and looked at how those ideas worked. But ultimately, what I went off of in designing this was making something really stable, making it work for my wife, my dog, and I, and all our gear was a different concept than what I had seen so far. So one of the engineering sayings is light, strong, or cheap, pick two. You can't have all three. And so going into this, we decided on a few key points that were going to be really important. The first one was that we had to use our mountain bikes, because if we got somewhere cool and we could ride, we really wanted to be able to use our mountain bikes, which eventually developed into, okay, let's use the mountain bike for the drive mechanism. The second one was that it needed to be stable and safe. And then the third one was that we wanted it to carry us parallel to each other. We didn't want it to be a tandem where we were front to back. We wanted to ride next to each other with our dog in the middle. Because if we're going to go experience these things together, it's nice to do it with the person next to you instead of just staring at somebody's butt the whole time. Those were the three important ones. And then we went from there and we're like, okay, how do we do this? I had to learn to weld. This is the first project I ever welded on. So we started with a good welder. Ella had an old pair of rollerblades in the basement. I remembered there was an old pair of longboard trucks with skateboard wheels. So perfect. We'll do double rollerblade wheels front and back on each side. And then we'll use the skateboard wheels perpendicular to that as the guides, because they're nice and thick. So as the rail thickness changes, we're okay. And so once we had gotten the materials and more or less a design figured out, it actually seemed like it was going to happen. As the wheels started to go together, we kept things square and we kept it strong. And things happen in front of you really quick. You go from an idea that when you go to build, it comes to life really quick. And so that night we actually got the trolley, if you will, running, and we decided we had to go test it. So we loaded it up and went down to the railroad and gave it a push, and it was wild. It glided so smooth and with so little effort. I think we gave it 2 kicks and we went probably 100 feet and had to put the brakes on to stop because we were in the darkness. So then from there, it was time to put the mounts on for the bicycle. We set it up so with a shim of plywood, we could change between 29-inch and 27.5. And then we put the decking on, and it was a pretty solid success. Here we go. It's kind of crazy. These railways have been in use for a long time. You kind of forget that a defunct railroad, it actually takes quite a lot to maintain a railway and keep it passable. You know, there's trees and branches. All it takes is a fallen tree on the railroad, and then we've got to get off, dismount. So when you're out there on a human-powered vehicle, there's no motor, there's no extra sound. It's just the sound of the rollers on the tracks. You get to experience it the way it was intended. So we've seen all sorts of stuff we wouldn't probably have seen had we been on a train or on a motorized vehicle. And you really do get to dissolve everything away from our daily lives and unplug. I had been so focused on this really intense sport of mountain biking and training and just trying to be faster, and that finding this balance in fly fishing and nature, it's a very freeing experience. Life is hectic, and honestly doing this project seemed like it was unnecessary at the time. It seemed like more work than I had time for. You know, we all have busy lives, but life is short. You don't get to do it twice. And taking the time to do a project like this, I think it's really important. Everything's uncertain, and so when you take on a project like this, it can open doors. We've got this rail bike now, so who knows where we're gonna go next. And I hope that we can inspire other people to follow through on their projects and their dreams, because the memories, the experiences, good and bad, they're worth so much. You can't put a dollar amount on it.
That's what all the people said. That's what all the people said when it blows their mind.